Podcast recording. All right. Live from the headquarters of Common Sense, this is Common Sense Christianity. As always, I'm your host, Ethan Foster, here today with another episode. Guys, we're doing things a bit differently today. I have someone on the phone. You won't be able to see him, but you'll be able to see my beautiful face during this whole conversation. If you're on the podcast, you always aren't able to see anything, obviously, since it's a podcast. Make sure you subscribe and leave a like below. Leave a question in the comment section, and I will respond to it as soon as possible. And guys, welcome Gabe to the program.
Oh, hello.
Hopefully y'all can hear him okay. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know if you can't hear him, and I'll adjust the settings. So, Gabe, you were with us on our podcast a couple weeks ago. So I want you to explain for our YouTube audience why you're an atheist.
I'm kind of an atheist because, okay, hold up. Sorry about that. I'm kind of an atheist just from the fact of I don't believe in God just because of all the stuff that happens in the world. I believe that I know there is like scientific proof of just like the Bible and everything like that. Like I heard there was like something of like Jesus's tomb, not tomb, or like his like gravesite or like one of his like
the garden tomb. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. I believe that Jesus was like a historical he was a person in real life. Like I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that the views that he spread, he believed them, but I don't believe that necessarily God itself is real. Or if God's real, I don't think that he is what everyone brings him out to be.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Okay. So
sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I just kind of believe that, like, even if he is real, it's just like I'm one of those people who think that there's more like advanced life. Like, not trying to get all like crazy conspiracists out here, but if there was like a God, I'm pretty sure he just made this earth, made this thing, just went. And if there wasn't a God, the Big Bang happened. How that happened, I still don't really know, but just overall, that's what I think.
Yeah. All right. So a lot of things to cover in this discussion. Firstly, you mentioned Jesus. Of course, I think he's real. It's not as much of a debate anymore. Most atheists will give you like some sort of Jesus to think about. So I'd like to start with this to open up the conversation. If you asking me a question about why I'm a Christian or any objections that you specifically have, you listed a bunch in there, but do you have any like questions for me as a Christian?
Okay, so I have a couple, and they may seem weird. I was just like thinking about it today. Has there ever been something that may have like thrown off your faith a little bit? May have been something that kind of like put a divot in the road or something like that, or just like not really?
Well, I think for every true Christian, there's been something that has thrown us off our faith for a bit. For me, it will be back in third grade when I didn't really understand anything about the universe or religion or anything, and I was just following with what my parents were teaching me. And there was this moment where a lot of family members died that I was really close to, and I began to doubt and ask those simple, basic questions of, well, why would God allow this particular thing to happen? Why would God, after I pray over these people, my grandpa was dealing with health issues, so I prayed over him and he died. And same thing with my other grandpa and my great grandma after that. And it's like, why wouldn't God listen to me? Why would God allow them to die? So I had that very basic and very common question that I didn't really begin to research and try and answer for myself until around 5th or 6th grade.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my answer to that. For Christians, it can be all sorts of things, putting a dent or a wedge in their faith, and it's a common variety. But in terms of it, what I do with atheists, I try not to argue from an emotional or spiritual position, but rather let's talk about the evidence. Let's talk about the common sense things about it, and see which worldview sounds more reasonable.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, sorry for your loss. Sorry for your loss.
It's fine.
Yeah. And then also, that makes a lot of sense because I know like a lot of like like a lot of these debates happen. I know it's like kind of dumb, but I've watched like one or two on YouTube. I'm pretty sure they're like over dramatic because it's always like BuzzFeed or something like that. Like, okay, I know what I'm talking about. It's just like I just watch like weird debates, but
yeah.
but it's just like I like how you're just like look at it from like a common like sense point of view, because like I know a lot of those debates can go real south like real quick.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a couple, it's just like a couple of friends and everything like that, and I'm just like, whoa, okay.
Well, yeah. Especially up here in Utah where we live, it's like people will say, well, the prophet has blessed me or something, or the church. I have this feeling burning in my bosom every time I walk into the church. And for me, that's not sufficient enough. That's not an argument. That's just you talking about subjective personal feelings, which is fine. But if you're going to convince me of anything, you have to give me a bit more than that, especially since for Mormonism, and I have a lot of Mormons that listen to the podcast, so I have to be very careful with what I say. With Mormonism specifically, its entire basis is on the fact of feelings, on their feelings. So I try and separate myself from that, especially since a lot of Christians make that same mistake, and I used to make that mistake.
Yeah.
So I wanted to pick up to where we left off last time. And it was a very interesting conversation, and that is the creation of the universe. So I get all kinds of diverse and interesting and challenging ideas from atheists on this YouTube channel. And the main thing I realize is people are just listing the problems with my argument without giving a counter argument in a sense. So it's like how if you listen to Bernie Sanders or something, he'll complain. I'm not trying to be political because I'm not political on this podcast. I try not to be. If you listen to Bernie Sanders or just a random socialist, and they give the issues, all these issues with capitalism, but they don't present a argument that would actually truly fix it and be better than what we currently have. That's what I think of it as.
Yeah, I get it, which is like the whole like non like counteractive thing, because like somebody can say all the stuff they want to. They can be like, oh yeah, this is wrong and this is wrong, and then you'll just be like, oh okay, here's all these things, and then they'll just be like, well, it's still wrong. It's like also, and again, I'm really not trying to offend like any Christians or anything like that or any Mormons, but one of the answers I hate the most, because I talk to like different Christians, I talk to different Mormons about stuff. The number one response I do not like the most, in which I get that a lot of people have this response because it makes sense to them, is you have to have faith in it, or only God knows, or something like that.
Exactly. Exactly. I hate that response.
I'm just like, well, I'm like, okay, because there's nothing you can really respond to that. You like,
but you can't argue against that. Yeah.
You can't argue that. You're just kind of like, well, like, I guess.
Yeah, and that bothers me. It really does. And some people in the comment section will probably be like, well, Ethan, you argue from feelings all the time, which I don't. They just make up stuff half the time, but that's a part of being on YouTube. I hate it when they do this, and I don't know if you listen to the Mormon versus Christian debate on my podcast, but Caleb brought up this point too. He says there's certain things that only God can know, which I guess you can say is true, but there are certain things that you can figure out pretty easily. I'm trying to be careful with how I use my language here. When we talk about the existence of the universe, or with Caleb, I was talking about evidence for like how do you know, why do you believe Jesus came to America and stuff, and if the Israelites are the ancestors of Native Americans, why were there Native Americans before people came over to America? And he just says some things only God knows. And he said some other stuff which I don't think he thought completely through. Like he said that he claimed evolution all of a sudden, even though he doesn't really believe in evolution. He says that they were monkeys here in America. And I'm getting way off topic, but you get my point with this. that I really am bothered and concerned when people use that argument with me or an atheist or a Mormon, because it just completely throws out your own personal thought and the use of your brain to figure out the best likely approach or the best likely answer for a particular problem.
Yeah.
So going back to the question I was asking you earlier, so I want to dig into your views on the universe once again. How do you think we got here?
Again, that's a really hard question to think about. Like, I've been thinking about it, like just like randomly, I'll be sitting down and I'll think about like how the universe started. And to me, this may sound really dumb and some like really like third grade response, but to me, it's kind of like the whole chicken and the egg thing. Is like what came first.
Yeah.
And it's just like you can't really say it because then you could be like the egg.
Yeah.
But then
right.
Then it's just like a whole vice versa thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the whole thing is just like the Big Bang Theory happened,
yeah.
Well, how did the Big Bang Theory happen? Particles. Well, how did not particles, I mean atoms. How did atoms get here? Particle. How did it just goes into just like so many stuff.
Yeah.
And then it just goes down like a ladder and everything like that. And so I believe that the universe, or what made the universe, is this may be a really dumb response, but I believe
there's no dumb responses on here. I'll let you know if they're truly that dumb.
Yeah. I see, again, there's really nothing I could say because I could always just be like, well, it's always existed. But like everything has to have a start and everything has to have an end.
Okay.
It's just like, in my opinion, that's just how everything works. But,
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I honestly believe that the Big Bang Theory would make the most sense, but then again, you just have to go into so much different stuff about that, and then it's just like, again, you just have to chop down so much stuff, and then at the end of the ways, there's like scientists who, like, again, like, I know kind of what I'm talking about, but people way, 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 way more educated than me, like, still are just like, well, we're kind of at like a dead end here, like.
Well, I believe in the Big Bang. The Big Bang Theory is just how the start of the universe happened, basically. How we started from a single point, right? I mean, that's obviously true. Even a lot of Christians are beginning to admit this. There's still a lot that are skeptical towards the idea, and it will just take time to either convince them or let those people just die off with anti-scientific views. Now, the thing I get to with atheists, and I encourage you, if you're ever scrolling on my YouTube channel, Gabe, there's this dude that comments on most of my videos, Virtual Willis. Read his comments. He's an atheist, and he really gets me thinking about stuff because he talks about the cause and effect, really. And he was posing me with these questions about a week ago about how I talk about the universe having a cause, and then he said, "Well, what caused God?" And I give the typical Christian answer of God's always existed, right?
Yeah.
Then he says you can't have it both ways. God cannot be constricted to the law of logic and the law of cause and effect.
Yeah, like I've heard sorry, I'm really not trying to cut you off here, but like I've heard I talked to some Christians about it, and like I've heard some say that like God is above like the laws of the universe or something like that. In which I'm just like because again, I was just like, well, if there was a God, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Because it's just like if he created everything, it's not like he has to follow like the rules. But then that also gets in Bible stuff, and like again, I've read like a big chunk of the Bible. I haven't read all of it though, but again, like I've heard like it's just like, oh, he's above just like everything. In which like if there was a God, that would make 100% sense.
Yeah. And you know, it made me rethink my position and wording because, like I was saying, I can't flip flop on the laws. So, which is it? Is God constrained to none of the laws, or is he constrained to all of them? It can't be either or. So right now, and this is not my permanent position, I am at a matter of God isn't constrained to the laws. There is natural law, which laws of logic, laws of cause and effect, all those that apply to the universe, and God is outside of that. So the laws of the universe, he is not constricted to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an interesting conversation that I had, and I was wrong on some parts, so that's why I'm clearing up my position now, because more than likely he'll probably watch this video. So continuing with that, I want to know, again, I just want to hear some more objections to see how well I can answer them right now. Because last time it was me giving you objections on the podcast. I want you to try and give me some more objections. So you have the floor, Gabe.
Yeah. Okay. And again, I was thinking, and so first of all, do you believe that if God's real, if he's like, of course, if God's real, I don't think that you think that he's like ultimate evil, but do you think he's like ultimate good, or do you think he's just like neutral, just like
the Christian belief is that he's ultimate good. Anything that he does is ultimate good.
Yeah. But then it's just like, also one thing for me is why, and again, this comes back to something we were talking about last time. Like, if he was ultimate good, then why didn't he put the tree on? It was like the tree of knowledge. I can't think of what it was.
The knowledge of good and evil in the middle of the garden, right?
Yeah. Why did he put that there if he's ultimate good? But why did he put the temptation for ultimate bad there too? Couldn't he just been like, it would be better if, like, I don't put the concept of like, I think it's the concept of good and evil. I think. Yeah. But like, why did he put that there?
Well, it's a choice to make. So why he puts it in a specific place, I don't know. But he warned Adam and Eve not to eat the fruit, right? For me, I think of it this way, and this is a typical apologist response, and I know I'm going to get criticism on YouTube. I don't care. Don't comment on it. The reason being is that if you're going to have ultimate love for someone, if you are going to make humans, God wants to win your love in a sense, right? So he puts that there as a choice. You can choose me or you can choose evil and suffer the consequences of it. And that's really how I see it and how a lot of Christians see it. It is your choice. It is your decision to decide whether you want God or not. And you have to suffer the consequences of it.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. But again, for me, it's just kind of like it's good that the ultimate good decision there would be to put like a choice there. So I guess if there was a God, that would make 100% sense if it did that. That would make 100% sense, because it's just kind of like the best decision would be like, well, I'm not going to dictate your lives, so you decide what you want to do. But like, if you make the wrong decision, you make the wrong decision.
Well, yeah, and it's also he warned him about it. It's not like God just showed up. Oh, you ate the bad tree. Now I got to kick you out. It's like God said specifically, you will die if you eat this fruit. Now again, the atheists on the show can take that and run with it if they want to, but for me that makes sense. Freedom of choice. I'm a big believer, since I'm a libertarian conservative, I'm a big believer in the individual's choice, and I think that God was right for doing that. And but it's a very interesting conversation to be had about morality, right? And it's one of the biggest things Christians and atheists alike struggle to grapple with. So it's like, for me, as a Christian, I have to struggle with why would God allow these things to happen? And you, as an atheist, would have to struggle with, well, what ultimately makes these things wrong? What ultimately, why are we forcing our laws? Why even care about moral practices and moral systems and just morality in general?
Yeah. Which, again, I think there's some stuff that is just like, that was kind of iffy that happened. Like, I know that, like, and again, there's a lot of stuff that probably a lot of atheists bring up, and a lot of stuff that you hear over and over again. But it's like, it's something that I also can't grasp my head around. If you're like that much of make good, drowning the whole earth and then just like leaving a family there, and then like he made it so of course everyone could like repopulate and everything, like stuff could repopulate, but then and again, I'm not trying to get like weird or anything with here, but like, wouldn't that mean that like at some point, like for example, Adam and Eve, like incest would have to happen there? That's not ultimate good. Like,
Whoa. Hold up. So you mentioned incest. Again, this whole Adam and Eve debacle with incest and stuff, it's a big conversation we had that I try not to get into when having these conversations with fellow Christians. Same thing with Noah's Ark, because my views are not the common view. So remember, I'm a big believer in evolutionary theory.
Yeah.
And the Big Bang. So if that happened, Adam and Eve would have had to live 6,000 years ago, according to biblical not theology, genealogy.
Yeah.
So with that, now the first Homo sapien appeared around 200 to 300,000 years ago. So that means Adam and Eve weren't the first humans; they were just one of many, right? So you don't have to deal with incest there. Second of all, with Noah's Ark, there is proof that around the place where the biblical description has Noah's Ark at, there was a massive flood around that time period, but it wasn't worldwide. It was a localized flood, but it was a very, very, very big flood that took around the biblical amount of time to drain out and completely. So for me, I do think Noah's Ark is geographical. As of now, I am willing to change my opinion on it, as I am with many things.
Yeah.
So with that perspective, I'm just going to assume with your thing about the incest that I'm going to take the Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark account completely literally. All right. So let's assume that Adam and Eve were the first two people and were the only two people, and they had intercourse, and they created their children, and they would have had to have intercourse. Now, Gabe, at that point, since they're the only people, would it be wrong for them to have sexual relations to populate the earth?
I feel like, again, it's just like, it's a very weird response because, like, I'm very much against incest, as I'm pretty sure, like, 90% of the earth is, like...
Well, yeah.
But, like, if it came down to that, I would say that as, like, weird as it would be, that would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's kind of weird, but it's just, like,
yeah.
that would make sense. Do you mind if I grab my Bible real quick, just, like, to kind
of
roll through, like, the verse?
Go ahead. I'll grab mine while you're at it.
Okay.
Let's be as quick as possible. I'll go ahead and talk to the audience for a bit. While we're waiting for Gabe to grab the best book on earth, that's a bias of mine, but go check out my new podcast, Sons of Liberty podcast, if you are interested in not religious, political and conservative debate and topics. We just started that. We're going to try and grow that more. Go check out our podcast, our website, our Instagram account. Follow all of those. Support us, guys, whether you're atheist, Christian, Hindu, Muslim. I don't really care. Just support us, guys, because we open up the debate and we are willing to listen to all perspectives within reason. And Gabe still doesn't have his Bible. I don't know what else to talk about right now.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, I got it right here.
Okay. You're looking for a verse?
Yeah, sorry. So I'm looking to, like, because since we're going on, like, the topic of, like, the universe and everything like that, I'm reading I don't know, yeah, I'm reading, like, the first verse and everything like that, like, so, like, sorry, so I'm reading this, and so, described by, like, the Bible, I don't know if, like, again, I don't know if you believe this too, but it says, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and so, like, again, I'm really not trying to get all, like...
Just go ahead and make your point.
Like, acting smarter than I am, but, like, what do you think it means by, like, the beginning? Do you mean, like, the beginning of, like, the earth?
I generally agree with the Frank Turek perspective on this, is that at that point in the beginning, space, matter, and time came into existence. So that would be my general view on that.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm just, like, reading through this, but I'm also trying to talk.
Yeah.
Okay. So Sorry, it's just like super like weird to think about, I guess.
But, it's fine. It's fine. We're all about thinking on this show.
Yeah.
Some might say not, but we are. Talking about you, Bill Garthwaite.
Yeah, for sure.
I got my favorite atheist to talk to on here too.
But again, so okay, sorry. So right here again, it does say it does say like about like the beginning and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
so like sorry. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out like how to like word this, I guess. So when it says, I know you just answered this, but there's also like another question that goes with it. So
Alright.
it says like in the beginning, like heaven and earth were made. So does that mean that like the beginning of like, I know you already answered what you think like the beginning is, but like, so when it says the beginning, does it mean like earth was created at the same time the universe was created?
No. So when you read the next verse, it says the earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. And of course, I wasn't talking about literal water, because water isn't just going to be floating around randomly in the universe at the creation. So when it talks about earth, it's talking about the pre-plans of it, basically.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense then. So that answers that. Sorry about that. But okay, I would like to ask you right now.
All right.
So you do believe in like evolution and everything like that, right?
I do.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it and make sure like I'm not like saying anything that's like wrong or anything like that.
You gonna try and contradict me really quick?
Huh?
I said you're gonna try and contradict me really quick.
I'm gonna try, but like I'm probably gonna fail.
No. People contradict me all the time.
Okay. So right here. So it says right here, the Lord God formed a man from the dust and the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically like he just like formed the human.
Okay.
And then like that was like the first, and even right here it says like, sorry, I have like I have a Bible, but like on like the sides it also says just basically like what the people are and stuff like that. And so right here it says that like God, like Adam is the first human being, and it like by dust. So wouldn't it be that if he was the human being, the first human being, and he was like the first just like everything to exist, and he was also made out of like the earth and everything like that, wouldn't that kind of counteract the whole evolution thing from being that like monkeys?
Okay, Gabe. So we could take this verse so far into the whole history of scientific knowledge. So first, let's get to the first human. It never says specifically first human. Probably means it. I don't know. But we can. Second of all, when it talks about the dust of the earth, have you ever listened to Neil deGrasse Tyson?
I have not.
Okay. So if you ever listen to any astrophysicist, they'll talk about we're made from stardust and stuff. So again, it's left for interpretation. Now, I've read the entire Bible, Gabe, and since you've read a majority of it, you probably know this, that there are some things in the Bible that are meant to be taken literally and others figuratively, and it's decided by a subjective sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like,
for example, Isaiah says God looks over the circumference of the earth, while somewhere in Revelation it talks about the corners of the earth. Now that appears to be a contradiction, but obviously when Revelation's talking about it, it's talking about a figurative sense when you read around it. And Isaiah was probably talking in this figurative sense in a way, because I can bet you none of them believed that the earth was round. It was spherical or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I take the some of Genesis with that same approach, and this is an approach that is taken by churches like the Catholic Church today. That the first chapter, the creation story of Genesis, and the fall of Adam and Eve are meant to be taken figuratively and meant to explain a certain story. So it's like how Jesus told a parable. He was trying to make a point with that. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense right there. Because like, if that's like, yeah, that would make sense. If that was a lot more figuratively, because that would still like explain things. So that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Now you can pose that question to someone who doesn't take it figuratively and believes in a 6,000-year-old Earth, which I know plenty of them, but you can't argue with that scientifically, right?
Yeah.
You can't come up with that case. It's impossible. Check out Ken Ham and you'll see what I'm talking about. His debate with Bill Nye. And it was one of the first times I've ever agreed with Bill Nye on anything.
Oh, God. And then, okay. Sorry to also go back to the whole evolution thing, but
okay.
Is there evolution, so we evolved from monkeys, eventually we evolved into humans.
Well, we evolved from a monkey-like ancestor.
Yeah.
I say that with clarity because I thought we actually evolved directly from chimpanzees when I was a young Earth creationist. For the young Earth creationists out there listening to this, we didn't evolve from chimpanzees. We didn't evolve from modern day apes. We evolved from an ape-like ancestor. Continue, Gabe. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's all good. But so if evolution was a thing, wouldn't there be more humans than Adam and Eve? Because if evolution happens, wouldn't that be more population happens?
Well, yeah.
More everything happens, so there'd be more humans than Adam and Eve on the Earth.
So I made this point earlier in saying that the first Homo sapien appeared around 200 to 300,000 years ago, based on modern day fossil evidence. Now, I have two views that I am looking at and haven't decided between yet. Either Adam and Eve never existed at all and they represent the human race as a whole in our rebellion with God, or they were a particular two persons living in between this era around 6,000 years ago, and something happened. And there's a third position that I find highly unlikely, that the Bible left out the genealogies for it. And they're actually much older, and they are the first humans. So I find the first position that I stated most likely, but I am up for consideration for all three of those.
Yeah, for sure. Because I know that one can be taken just with everything else, it can be all taken just a whole bunch of different ways, just like you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's an interesting conversation to be had. And you know what? One day I'll try and get my pastor on here to talk about it because he doesn't believe in evolution and all that. So it would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
So you have any other questions for me, Gabe?
Sorry, I know I had one. It's on the tip of my tongue right now. Sorry about that. I can't think about it right now. I'm very sorry about that.
Hey, dude, it's fine. I can't think of any either. We covered so much in our first podcast episode. It's kind of hard to think of something. But if that's it, I'll go on and close the episode. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Common Sense Christianity. It was long, it was tiring, I know, but hopefully you stayed through it. Make sure you tell everyone you know about the podcast, but don't go over to their house and tell them. Call them, text them. We don't need to spread the coronavirus. Stay safe, guys. I'm praying for you. Pray for this show. Help us continue to spread the word of God. And until next time, I'm Ethan Foster here with Common Sense Christianity. Thanks for being with us, Gabe.